Good morning, guys. Welcome back to my channel. This is Coach DC from All 22 Films. My first film study after the Lions 16-14 loss to the Bengals in week 1 of the preseason will be on Ahmed Hassanein, as well as a number of the other defensive linemen that I thought played with a ton of force, energy, and effort. Let's get right to the film study here. We're just going to be on the first possession. It's a 6-1 look for Detroit. Hassanein is located up here at the top side of the screen. I will give you the end zone angle in a moment. I thought it was pretty cool, man, that Kelvin Sheppard'S backup second and third string guys are able to get Cincinnati off the field on the first possession and hold them to a field goal on the second. So Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins are lined up in a stacked twins alignment at the top of the screen. It's play action on a 2nd and 7. And the Bengals are looking to throw the football, obviously, to that side with the route configuration that you've got. Credit to Kelvin Sheppard, man. His defense was multiple from the standpoint of getting base looks on the field, nickel looks on the field, which I will generally refer to as 4-2 looks. I will give you the end zone angle of this one in a moment. Here is Hassanein up at the top side of the screen. I think there's at least one read here, if not two. I'll talk about the first one. Let's get to the second one. He's got a loop behind one of the inside linebackers and then around a defensive tackle. I believe that is Mekhi Wingo, in order to get here and sack Joe Burrow. Again, this is on the first possession. I love the path that he takes. I'll have some comments about Hassanein's stance and his get-off being, in my opinion, a little bit more consistent. But his reads and his reactions, his recognition and awareness, if you ask me, visually confirming what's in front of him and then reacting appropriately. I think that's vastly improved from the last time we saw him, which was, of course, in the preseason of 2025. I think his stance is also perhaps a little bit wider, in my opinion. There's more distance between his right foot and his left foot. There is some differential as far as how far back this outside foot is, whether he's on the left-hand side of the defense, like you see here, or the right. In addition, in this 6-1 look, Chuck Clark is rolled up to the right side of our screen. Just, you guys can't see him here. He's just up off at the 3 o'clock position. So in effect, it actually ends up looking like a 7-1 look. You've got 7 players on the line of scrimmage, 1 inside linebacker available. So Wingo is the player that is magnified or spot shadowed here. Hassanein is going to loop all the way around, but I think there's a first read. Now, yes, Hassanein has to occupy this offensive lineman, right? But I think there's an additional read here or layer to this. If the Bengals' offensive line was sliding or moving in this direction, I don't think in some instances of this loop stunt where Hassanein takes this path here, in some instances of that, he would not loop all the way around. He would just continue to try to fight to the quarterback or to the running back. And so when I say 2 reads, I think this is the first one. I recognize, however, that the D tackles are slanting in his direction. So, there'll be some people who say that's not the case here. I'm just opening your eyes to the fact that there are examples or iterations of this stunt where you, as the looper, have to read the offensive lineman first. If he steps to you, then you become the guy who loops all the way around, like we see here. If he doesn't step to you, then you attack, whether it's the quarterback, fullback, running back that steps to you. In any case, it's a really cool play that the Lions are able to execute quickly enough to get to Joe Burrow. The coverage at times looked pretty good, to be honest with you, whether they were in man or zone. And this play was right about the time when the social media reaction of Bengals fans kind of like just took off. Burrow is obviously, one of their 2 biggest assets, along with Ja'Marr Chase, and putting him out there in a preseason game and then having him take sacks here and then quarterback hits later. It triggered them, and rightfully so. They've had issues keeping him upright and keeping him available, for long periods of time. And as a, Ravens fan and Ravens content creator, I obviously have some Bengals people that follow me and vice versa. I think that the Lions D-line deserves credit. They're responsible for that reaction, that triggering, if you will. And Hassanein really led the way, in my opinion. He was really excited, right? After this first sack, the difference in reaction will show up at the end of this video because he was confident and really assured after the second one in the third quarter. Like I said at the outset of this video, it's going to be about more than just Hassanein. The other defensive ends, defensive tackles, whole group, they really defined the night from a Detroit perspective, in my opinion. However, this next play will once again involve Hassanein. It's after that sack, 3rd and 15, a running back screen that I thought was delayed. And then checking the film out this morning, it obviously is not. Typical screenplay where you have the offensive tackles pass setting on the defensive ends or edge rushers, and then interior offensive linemen releasing to go block out in front for the screen. It's not going to be enough for Cincinnati to get the first down. What I want to call attention to here, one of my points that I'll make repeatedly, is the recognition of Hassanein. And he's got great burst. He's a really good athlete. I don't exactly remember the combine scores and all of that. What I do know is once he decides to get to the football, he's got great pursuit. Played extremely hard and aggressive last night. And here you'll see it's Nowaski, who I thought played extremely well. He does a lot of small things at a high level. In this case, Nowaski, upon approach, is going to make sure to get to the outside shoulder of the running back, Pirine, and he exists, Nowaski, in between the blocking schemes. So the first offensive lineman, the guard, getting to the corner and or nickel defender. The second offensive lineman, 64, Nowaski, is fitting between there. And again, he's fitting off the outside shoulder. And then Hassanein closing down is really the second guy to make contact. Granted, he is the defensive end to that side. I just want to call attention to those two plays back-to-back. The sack on the loop stunt, where there's definitely some recognition, at least one read, if not two. And then this tackle or assisted tackle on the 3rd and 15 screen. The Bengals starters along the offensive line, they looked a little lethargic. And again, I think you have to credit Detroit's defense overall globally, but specific their defensive line. They played with a ton of force. They attacked. Got a stop on the first possession against Cincinnati starters, like I said. And I think Hassanein really was leading the charge. Before we start talking about some other guys, in this case it'll be Anthony Lucas here on the second possession. As far as Hassanein's stance, being a little bit wider in that outside foot, sometimes being a little bit further back, again, it depends on whether he's on the left side or the right side of the defense from what we saw last night. I think it helps with a more consistent get off. He's athletic enough, he's very strong. Being able to get off the football and attack the offensive tackle or whoever the blocker is in the case of a run concept quicker on his own terms, I think benefits Hassanein and the defense overall. So like I said, we'll focus on other guys. This is an 11 personnel group. I think Sheppard deserves credit for moving the goalposts or changing the shape of the defense often. So here we've got a nickel 4-2 inside the box. I will, in a later video, kind of reveal some of the defensive tracking that myself and Josh Slaughter were able to do live to essentially create a custom database, or what we believe will be a custom way to track information throughout the season. So many times last year, Sheppard kept a 4-3 look against 11 personnel. That's been talked about, ad nauseum. Here, Lucas is the edge defender, and he widens up when this tight end kind of widens up as well. You can see the tight end had, actually I cut the recording, or I began the recording a little bit late. My apologies for that. But the tight end had motioned in from off screen to our right-hand side, and that widened Lucas up a little bit. He plays this like an NFL edge defender, meaning he doesn't really play it from a technical standpoint, but those guys are athletic enough to be able to do this, to be able to jump inside what I would refer to as a really poor kick-out block attempt by the right guard, 66. I'm not sure if that's their starter or not. The way Cincinnati's trying to do this is the tight end is initially stepping to Lucas to try to hold or widen him up for a moment, or a little bit further, such that the guard can kick him out, number one. Number two, you can see Chase Brown, as the ball is being snapped, he's kind of giving a look off, if you will, that he's not going to get the football, and then puts his foot in the ground, tries to jump underneath. When I say that Lucas is playing this like an NFL edge defender, you wouldn't teach this to high school or youth football athletes as far as how to play this. You would want to be a little bit tighter, on a 1st and 10 I'm talking about, and get a piece of this tight end such that he can't release directly up to Devin White. You can see what could theoretically happen here with the kick-out concept by the guard, which doesn't ever happen. But the idea would be if you can muddy things up for this tight end and delay his release, then you've got a free run for Devin White. It's not going to work out that way every time, number one. Number two, on 3rd and 8, you may play it differently. NFL edge defenders, even at the highest levels of college football, they're able to do this when the offensive lineman, in this case the right guard, does a really poor job of the kick out. I think Lucas could play this a little bit more technical, in my opinion, to keep Devin White clean. It's a 5-yard gain, by the way, specifically on a 1st and 10 is what I'm referring to. But nonetheless, Lucas, I thought last night showed off some athleticism, nose for the football. Like I said, this is a 1st and 10 in my opinion. He could play it a little bit better, specifically here by getting a piece of the tight end and not running around the guy, quote unquote. In addition, I felt like he had trouble with his footing at times during the game. He slipped on at least 3 occasions, one of which you'll see a little bit later here. Now we'll move on here and talk about consecutive plays made on that second possession by Eric O'Neill. James Madison and Rutgers product from a college standpoint, UDFA, that Detroit brought in. He certainly made an impact on this second drive. This is a 2nd and 3, and Detroit, once again, under Sheppard, they provided a multitude of looks here. They've walked up Devin White as an edge defender off the left-hand side of the defense, and they've left Nowatzki once again as the only remaining inside linebacker. However, Rakestraw, this is before he got hurt, obviously, has walked up into the box to add on potentially in the run fit. Like I said, it's a 2nd and 3. The Bengals under center offense, they've talked about it a lot in the offseason and training camp about, trying to be a little bit more balanced from a run-pass standpoint, and they can commit to this all they want. This is not what some of their best receivers are designed to do. You can see that they don't ask Jamar Chase or T. Higgins to do this, and what I mean is these insert blocks where they're base blocking on an edge defender, in this case Devin White, and then asking the receiver to insert inside of that C-gap. Same thing happening over here, by the way, and go and block a second-level defender. Normally, it's a safety. But as far as O'Neill goes, he's stunting down, pinching to the inside, and he'll disrupt the run concept such that Nowatzki is kept clean. Nowatzki can just fold over the top here, stay square, meet the running back in the hole. I should say that it's O'Neill and Wingo who are both stunting or pinching to the inside gap, and that's what allows Nowatzki to be so clean when he folds over the top. It's not the only way to disrupt those wide receiver insert schemes, don't get me wrong, but in this case, it worked out really well. Nice call, in my opinion, from Kelvin Sheppard on a 2nd and 3. And oh, by the way, Jamar Chase is on the field, so Kelvin Sheppard, doesn't know the play call, obviously, number one. And number two, with Jamar Chase out there, he's a constant threat to possibly get the ball down the field. Really nice job, if you ask me, by Eric O'Neill of stunting, pinching to the inside, and then trying to get upfield and disrupt that running back such that O'Neill, doesn't just get washed down and forces the running back's path to kind of almost jump cut a little bit or veer outside, and Nowatzki can meet him in the hole. There's a lot to break down with this play. This is after Nowatzki's tackle for loss on that 2nd and 3, creating a 3rd and 4 again. It's on Cincinnati's second possession. First of all, Detroit's going to play man free or cover 1. O'Neill is going to get the quarterback hit. I believe I misspoke in my reaction video Thursday night and called it a sack. But either way, this was a really big moment on the second possession. They had got a stop on the first one, and here they hold the Bengals to a field goal. I'm going to come back to the all-22 angle here in a moment. I'm going to talk about the end zone for a moment. Devin White is the will linebacker. I did 2 videos on him when the signing was announced. The will linebacker is something you will hear me refer to consistently. If you're not aware, the ball spends a ton of time on one or the other hashes, creating a wide side of the field, which is to our right here, and then the boundary or the short side of the field, which is to our left. That's where you'll find the will linebacker. If Devin White is on the field with Jack Campbell, of course, Jack Campbell would be set to the field, the Mike. Devin White would be set to the boundary, the will. But in any case, it's man-free. O'Neill gets the win, getting upfield, while Hassanein is more of a bull rush here off this left-hand side. Now, Brown is in this stance that he's patented. He's not the only guy who tries to use it. I have found where his 3rd, 4th steps is very difficult for him to stay balanced, in my opinion, in particular when he does these kind of pseudo jump sets. So it's not a typical pass set where he's getting some depth off at an angle, whether it's, people refer to it as A, B, C type angles. This is more kind of jumpy, if you will, flattening out. And you can see, first of all, really grabby, number one. Number two, his 4th step, by the time he's going to take his 4th step, his feet are almost touching. And because of the quickness of O'Neill, number one, and his contact balance, you can see O'Neill does take a shot. Don't get me wrong, at the outset, trying to rush here. He does take a shot from Orlando Brown there, and then is able to accept it, continue getting upfield. It's not just about the bend. It's about the contact balance, the ability to stay on your track and adjust to the pass set that the tackle is using. In this case, more of a flatter set by Brown as opposed to a pass set at an angle. And in my opinion, this makes you a little bit more susceptible to upfield rushes. I think Brown didn't respect him, to be honest with you. This was an amazing moment, man. Consecutive plays. I didn't know that it was O'Neal on the 2nd and 3. We obviously knew at this point, since I've broken it down, number one, but earlier this morning when I got access to the film, to see these plays made back-to-back, first by Hassanein, the sack, and then the tackle with Nowaski on the first possession, and then here, O'Neal, kind of the inverse, or the reverse, I should say, stunting to the inside to clear a path for Nowaski, and then the quarterback hit, is really a great moment, I think, for Sheppard'S defense, for the whole Lions, fan base, really. All 22 angle of the same play. I'm going to break this down a little bit more. You do have, I think, Rakestraw versus Chase up there at the top of the screen, spot shadowed or magnified, I should say. O'Neal is down here at the bottom. You can pay attention to him versus Orlando Brown if you want. But the coverage to the boundary, this is man-free. So Devin White is playing man on the running back, and Rakestraw is playing man on Chase. Yeah, there's a lot of contact there between Rakestraw, who tries to long arm with the outside arm here and then get his inside arm on Chase. But Chase is very physical and extremely strong too. He's, I think, really adept at being able to push off and get away with it. Here, he certainly takes two hands and gets into, Rakestraw's face mask. Burrow has already come off of that read. So I recognize that some people don't like me stopping and talking about this. That's how I know how to break down film. So, feel free in the comment section to let me know if you like or dislike someone stopping and starting the film so often. But you get an idea of the path here that O'Neal took to get around Orlando Brown. No help at all. I thought Brown, like I said, didn't necessarily respect O'Neal with this rep, but O'Neal played well the rest of the game in addition. He didn't get matched up with Brown, in particular, in the second quarter and beyond. You can expect to see this type of concept a ton, into the boundary. And what would happen in previous years is this was Anzalone. He would cover these routes well. I'm not sure that Barnes or Rodriguez is the guy to cover these, snag wheel, curl wheel, slant wheel concepts with the consistency that Devin White does here against Chase Brown, who's a pretty good pass receiving running back. I could be wrong that it was Rakestraw up there matched up with Chase. That's not the main point here of my breakdown. I'm really interested, however, in how some of those corners played. Whiteside, I thought I saw on the field. In fact, I think he's on the field on this snap down at the bottom of the screen. Rakestraw, before the injury, I felt like was getting picked on, in particular by Joe Flacco. Gave up at least 2 completions, maybe 3. I started off my breakdown or my analysis of the game by looking at the D-line film because I thought Hassanein, Lucas, Gill-Howard, even Wingo to an extent, even though he didn't have the statistical production as those guys, he played a role as far as the stunts. I thought those guys were really the tone setters for Detroit's defense in particular. We've moved on to, I believe, the second quarter here, and Burrow and the starters are out for Cincinnati. Joe Flacco is, of course, in. So 1st and 10, and you get a nickel response from Kelvin Sheppard'S. It's a quarterback hit here for Hassanein, and the swim move will get attention, all right? I think this is the 3rd possession, but I may have this mislabeled as the 4th. But in any case, it's a nickel look for Detroit, and you got Devin White widened up over 87. That's Hudson. If you're unaware, Hudson actually had a touchdown catch, a one-handed touchdown catch against Kyle Hamilton last year. I'm talking about this matchup here. I know you guys are losing perspective of Hudson off the left side. But the nickel, just on the right-hand side of our screen, is also going to make it look like he's going to rush, and then he peels to the running back. Hassanein has the right guard stepping to him. The swim move will get attention. His ability to stay on track or on path to the quarterback, and whether or not this is a late hit. First of all, I'm glad Joe Flacco is okay, but that's not the point of how I'm breaking this down. The larger point for me is what Hassanein does before the swim move. So he takes his left arm here, and he's able to just slightly break the posture of 74 and clear that path for the swim move. The swim move with the inside arm, the right arm in this case, gets a lot of attention, obviously, for the way that he executes it. I think what is more important, or at least similarly important, is the move that he does with the left hand before the swim move. He's decisive, and I thought Hassanein looked not just quick with his feet and his burst, but quick with his recognition and his hand strikes / moves to be able to get to the quarterback. I think it's more about just the 2 sacks for me and that quarterback hit. The improved stance, even though it's slightly different on one side versus the other, I think it's helped the get off and the burst. That, along with the recognition and what I perceive to be technical or technique improvements, gives us the performance that we saw last night, which should be pretty exciting for Lions fans. Here we've got yet another opportunity to talk about Hassanein. This is after the 2 teams exchanged turnovers. The really weird fumble by Flacco and the running back, or actually the poor snap and then the fumble by the running back after he gained a first down, and then the exchange between Altmaier and Jacob Sailors that resulted in a turnover down here inside the red zone. So it's a 1st and goal, and Cincinnati's going to run a duo concept, essentially. Hassanein will fold inside really well, if you ask me, after taking on the left tackle. It's another one of those wide receiver insert schemes. I'm talking about how the left tackle steps out to Hassanein, illustrated by that that yellow line, on the left-hand side of the screen, and then 81 stepping inside, presumably to go get a second-level defender. I didn't think Cincinnati looked great here in these concepts, but this is productive for them. They bring in a second wide receiver off-screen late. It's Charlie Jones to help out on the right side and just essentially creating a wedge-type play, which is what duo is to some degree. Hassanein is going to fold to the inside after taking on the left tackle, and then you'll see he's got great contact. I just felt like he would not be denied last evening as far as getting to the football, whether it was that 3rd and 15 screen on the first possession, retracing or retracking his steps to get back and help out Nowaski, or here in the middle of a scrum fighting to get involved and tackle the running back after, I think, a 4 or a 5-yard gain. Played extremely well. Should be exciting, like I said, for Lions fans, but also for Hassanein. I wish that he was at the point of attack on the very next snap. I'm talking about the touchdown from Flacco to Jack Endries. This is the play that I'm referring to. It's the very next snap, 2nd and goal, like I said, after the 2 teams exchanged turnovers, and then Hassanein was involved in the tackle on the duo concept there. So he is on the field here. He's just not at the point of attack. It's Lucas down here to the bottom, and I may actually be mistaken. I don't think that is Hassanein to the top side. But in any case, you get a return motion by one of the tight ends, illustrated by that orange line. So he's going to go in motion to the top side of the screen and then return back. And I wonder if that's what causes him to spring open. It's a really nice design by the Bengals. I wonder if the will linebacker shouldn't be involved here as well. But credit to Cincinnati, the design element here, they would possibly screen the will linebacker anyway if he was able to get to the football. I think it's Eric Hunter, the UDFA rookie from Morgan State. So what I'm referring to is how 84 ends up wide open in the flats. And look, this concept has plagued the Lions defense for years, dating back to like a 2023 game against the Saints, and I think a 2022 game against the Seahawks. I first noticed it, that anything with like horizontal motion, running back in one direction, tight end in the other. In this case, it's this tight end underneath on a pseudo hide concept. Those types of plays have oftentimes given the Lions difficulty, whether they were run to the field or to the boundary. Here, Lucas kind of squeezes down. Maybe he'd lost awareness or perspective of this tight end who came in return motion. The will linebacker, in addition, is not in the window at all. This is just too easy out into the right flats. I think the Bengals did a nice job designing this. 82 could conceivably pick the will linebacker. Again, I believe that's Hunter. If Hunter plays this a little bit more patient or stays on the backside of this, both of these guys can't pursue so much with the threat of the quarterback keeping it and a hide concept coming across. So really easy. At the NFL level, these concepts seem to work more often than they should. And part of the reason is that, DNs are force defenders, and they're responsible for playing, block down, step down, which is, to me, kind of incongruous or puts the player in conflict. It's a really nice play from a Bengals standpoint, too easy, and they take a 10-0 lead. Like I said, those concepts have plagued Detroit's defense for years, And here, even though you've got second, third string guys, you get another iteration of it. I got two more plays here to go over, and then some summary thoughts at the end, mostly focused on Hassanein. This is late in the second quarter. Cincinnati's now on their third quarterback, Josh Johnson. They probably have the oldest quarterback room in the country, but in the NFL certainly. It's a 2nd and 8 late in the second quarter, and this really is an opportunity to focus on the whole group, the pressure that they brought, the tenacity that they played with. The only guy that gets a quote win off the snap here is Lucas, and he's taking advantage of a favorable matchup for him. It's against the tight end Hudson that I talked about earlier. But the group that you've got on the field here is Anthony Lucas, left-hand side of our screen. Gill-Howard and Wingo are the D tackles. At least I'm pretty sure that that's Wingo because he gets a quarterback hit or he touches the quarterback a little bit later. And then O'Neal off the right-hand side of the screen. This scheme, this pass pro design won't work for Cincinnati. It doesn't work here against starting caliber defensive linemen because you just can't leave a guy like Hudson one-on-one with a physical, rugged, and athletically explosive defensive end. In this case, Lucas is able to win quite obviously easily with some push and drive Hudson back into Josh Johnson's lap, disrupt his whole flow. And then you've got Wingo and Gill-Howard. In addition, Gill-Howard, I think, is the guy who ends up getting the quarterback hit from a statistical standpoint because Johnson was able to escape. Interestingly, Detroit was only credited, I actually double-checked it this morning, they were only credited with 5 quarterback hits. At one point in time, ESPN had them down for 7, so maybe on another website that's been changed. It felt like they subtracted 2 of them during the game, basically is what I'm getting at. I thought Detroit's guys up front across the board played with a ton of force, effort, and the type of energy that Sheppard and the D-line coaches would obviously want. They had those guys fired up, and I think Sheppard and the whole defensive staff deserve a ton of credit for playing the way they did, in particular the first 2 possessions against the Bengals offensive starters. One more play to break down and talk about here. It's, of course, Hassanein's second sack, the strip sack versus the left tackle. I think it's Andrew Coker, second, perhaps third string guy for the Bengals. I mistakenly have this labeled as 2nd and 14 in the top portion of your screen. I think it's actually a 3rd and 4 or a 3rd and 5. But in any case, it's the awareness here for Hassanein to get his hands out and strip the ball. Again, he's in a 3-point stance. I think him, Lucas, and O'Neal all will play better and look better, be more explosive from a 3-point stance. So a couple of things are happening here. It is a one-on-one for Hassanein against 79. I do like the fact that he's able to get his left arm up underneath the offensive tackle and kind of forklift him a little bit and then rip underneath and get to the quarterback, knock the ball out. But how does the one-on-one occur? Well, first of all, I think the running back is checking Hunter, the will linebacker, like I said, PG County product. If you're not aware of the type of athletic talent that PG County puts out for basketball and football players, just truly amazing for a smaller area. Granted, it is outside of D.C., to be able to put out so many pro-level NBA players and NFL players, in addition to Division I athletes. But it's a real nice job by Hassanein of getting that left arm underneath of the offensive tackle. I think somewhere in this area, Hassanein knows that his move, it's starting to look like a swim for a moment, isn't going to work, and I think he adapts it. I may be reading too much into it. I think he adapts it into that left arm going underneath the pads, underneath the pec of the left tackle, and then being able to rip underneath of that as well and get to the quarterback, knock the ball out of Josh Johnson's hands. Another really cool moment. Unfortunately, Cincinnati did recover the fumble, and I think they eventually took a 13-6 lead. But the power, the strength, all on display for Hassanein, but as well as the technique and the improved stance. I get it that most people are going to focus on the 2 sacks. To me, it's the activity level, the pursuit in open space and on the goal line that really shows you've got a tremendously improved player in his second year. There's a lot to talk about, obviously, coming out of this game. Not a great start for the interior O-line at all. As far as the guards, Miles Frazier really struggled. Mahogany, I thought played better than Frazier, but haven't had a chance to really look at the offensive film, or haven't intentionally looked at it because I wanted to focus on the D-line, and in particular Hassanein. I do intend to do a video on Blake Miller and also Seth McLaughlin, the center. I'm interested to see how those guys looked on film. I've only broken down the D-line film and then cut up the offense in order to get that film in the hands of the people on my Patreon. One of the things I want to do this year, besides present film study videos like this and do a lot of data tracking for the offense and the defense, is make offensive film available for the people who support me on my Patreon. Essentially, I did that this morning, shared it as a downloadable file. I believe it's the first half film only. After lunchtime, I'll get the second half film up. Hassanein is the main focus here, for me at least, in this video. His energy, which is not surprising, right? You can tell the guy loves playing football, in particular loves playing football for Detroit. The size, the athleticism, as well as the improved technique. I think it all starts with his stance. It looks a little wider to me, offset, perhaps a little more off to the one side. Maybe others have noted that or mentioned it. Feel free to let me know in the comment section. I do think his play recognition, his recognition and awareness during the play, has been sped up. And then he just flies to the ball, whether it's in a compressed goal line situation or short yardage look from Cincinnati, that goal line that I talked about after the team's traded fumbles, or the 3rd and 15 screen on the first possession. I want to get away from just analyzing the sacks for a moment. Him retracing his steps on that screen and getting to the football and then folding inside against the left tackle for the Bengals in that goal line situation. There's the same guy who made those two plays. I think that's important, in my opinion. It's encouraging and really hints at the growth. Maybe it's even more revealing than just the 2 sacks, but I know everyone will focus on those things, rightfully so to an extent. The quarterback hit on Flacco seems a little underrated because of the setup, the ability to use the left arm to begin to break the posture, to set up the swim. I think he looks like a different guy in a lot of ways from last year. Unfortunately, the rookie season was cut short, and it was a long road back for Ahmed Hassanein to Detroit, and he's thriving, at least so far. Other guys deserve mention. The whole D-line group played, I think, at a very high level. O'Neal, Lucas, Gill-Howard, I talked about all of them in this video at various points. They had impact. Gill-Howard, I believe, had 2 quarterback hits. Sheppard deserves credit getting the defense ready. Normally the defense will almost always, 2nd and 3rd string defenses will oftentimes be ahead of 2nd and 3rd string offense guys in the preseason for a lot of reasons. They were ready, however, defensively to compete with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and the Bengals starting offensive line and running backs. And for that reason, I think that Sheppard deserves a ton of credit. I would, at some point over the weekend, if I get a chance, like to talk about the different looks that he showed. Maybe the coverages that he deployed post-snap as well. But I think Sheppard did a great job getting guys in position. And then Hassanein, O'Neal, Lucas, Gill-Howard, among others, took advantage. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comment section, man. Comments really drive the engagement for these types of videos on YouTube, which is increasingly making things very difficult for people to put out content and generate revenue. So if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comment section, number 1, or you can grab a link to this video, share it somewhere out on social media if you'd like for other Lions fans to be able to enjoy it as well. Appreciate you guys' time.